The first gift was a beautiful orchid arrangement delivered to Rebecca's office with a card that read, "For brightening my husband's afternoons." She probably thought it was sweet until she opened the envelope and found printouts of her hotel receipts with my husband's credit card. My name is Victoria Sterling, and for 18 months I'd been discovering my husband's affairs one by one, each more elaborate than the last, each more insulting to our 20-year marriage. But instead of confronting him or filing for divorce immediately, I decided to do something different. Something creative. Something that would ensure every woman who thought she could destroy my marriage would remember exactly what it cost them. You see, I wasn't just a betrayed wife with too much time on her hands. I was a luxury event planner who specialized in creating unforgettable experiences for high-profile clients. My job was understanding people's deepest desires and then delivering them in ways that exceeded all expectations. What my husband Richard and his parade of mistresses didn't know was that I was about to plan the most memorable series of events they'd ever experience. Each gift would be perfectly tailored, exquisitely presented, and absolutely devastating. And with each delivery, they'd learn exactly what happened when you underestimated a woman who made a living creating perfect moments. Picture this: a colonial mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I spent my mornings reviewing client proposals for million-dollar weddings and charity galas. Richard would kiss me goodbye each morning before heading to his investment firm in Manhattan, and I'd spend my days creating dream events for society's elite. Sterling Events had built its reputation on flawless execution and creative brilliance. I was the planner who could secure impossible venues, source rare flowers in the dead of winter, and coordinate events so perfect that they became the standard other planners aspired to reach. "Victoria, darling, you've outdone yourself again," Mrs. Pemberton had gushed after her daughter's engagement party. "The way you transformed the conservatory, it was like stepping into a fairy tale. You have such a gift for making dreams come true." If only she knew how skilled I was becoming at turning dreams into nightmares. Richard and I had settled into the comfortable rhythm of a successful marriage. He'd returned from the city with stories about difficult clients and market volatility. I'd share updates about upcoming events and demanding brides. We'd have dinner at our antique dining table, discuss weekend plans, and maintain the perfect facade of Connecticut society marriage. "You're amazing at what you do," Richard would tell me over wine. "The way you anticipate people's needs, the attention to detail, I'm so proud of what you've built." He was right about my attention to detail, more right than he realized. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared 6 months ago when Richard started working late nights that coincided perfectly with the social events I was planning. Every time I had a high-profile evening event that would keep me out until midnight, Richard suddenly had urgent client dinners or market emergencies that required his attention. But here's the thing about being an event planner. You develop an obsession with timelines, logistics, and coordination. When someone's schedule starts aligning too perfectly with opportunities for deception, you notice patterns. Credit card statements rustling. I started with our joint credit card statements, the same methodical approach I used when reconciling event expenses. What I found wasn't just evidence of infidelity, it was evidence of systematic, expensive infidelity with multiple women over an extended period. Hotel charges at the plaza when he was supposedly meeting clients in Midtown. Jewelry purchases from Tiffany that I'd never received. Restaurant charges for 2 at establishments he'd never taken me to. And most damning of all, recurring charges at high-end boutiques in Manhattan. Purchasing gifts for women whose tastes I could map based on the stores he frequented. Using the same vendor network and social connections that made my event successful, I started identifying Richard's affairs with the precision of a military operation. The florist who'd noticed him buying roses for someone else. The hotel concierge who'd seen him with different women. the jeweler who'd helped him select pieces that definitely weren't my style. Within 3 weeks, I'd identified 4 separate affairs spanning the past year. Each woman had received gifts purchased with our joint accounts. Each affair had been conducted during times when I was occupied with major events. Each relationship had been systematically hidden using the same patterns of deception. But what infuriated me more than the affairs themselves was the insulting predictability of it all. Richard thought he was so clever, timing his betrayals around my work schedule, using our shared resources to court other women, believing I was too busy with my little event planning business to notice his systematic adultery. That's when I realized Richard and his mistresses had made a crucial error in judgment. They'd underestimated a woman whose entire career was built on creating experiences that people would never forget. And I was about to give each of them the most memorable experience of their lives. I pulled out my client planning templates, the same detailed project management tools I used for society weddings and corporate galas, and began designing what would become the most creative revenge campaign of my career. Each mistress would receive a perfectly crafted gift that revealed exactly how much I knew while demonstrating the consequences of betraying the wrong woman. And Richard would watch helplessly as his carefully compartmentalized world imploded one beautiful, devastating present at a time. The beauty of having an extensive network in luxury services is that information flows both ways. The same vendors who helped me create magical events for clients were more than happy to share observations about my husband's less magical activities throughout Manhattan. Mrs. Sterling? It was Giuseppe from Bellacourt Flowers, where I'd been a preferred client for 8 years. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I thought you should know. Mr. Sterling has been ordering arrangements for delivery to an office on Madison Avenue. Different arrangements than what he usually requests for you. Giuseppe, I appreciate your discretion. Could you tell me more about these arrangements? The delivery address, perhaps the recipient's name? Rebecca Martinez, Senior Marketing Director at a PR firm in Midtown. Weekly flower deliveries for the past 4 months, always charged to Richard's personal credit card, always with romantic cards that Giuseppe had found unusual for a married man. I researched Rebecca with the same thoroughness I used when vetting vendors for high-profile events. 34 years old, divorced, ambitious, and according to her LinkedIn profile, recently promoted to a position that required extensive client entertainment, the kind that might involve afternoon meetings with investment advisors like my husband. Voice becoming strategically calm. That's when I planned Rebecca's gift. I selected the most beautiful orchid arrangement Giuseppe could create. Exotic white phalaenopsis in a crystal vase worth more than most people's monthly salary. The card was cream cardstock with gold embossing, the kind of elegant stationery I used for my most exclusive client communications. For brightening my husband's afternoons. With deepest appreciation for your professional services, Mrs. Richard Sterling. But the real message was in the envelope I attached. Copies of every hotel receipt, every restaurant charge, every flower delivery that had been charged to our joint accounts during their affair. Each document was highlighted with the same precision I used when presenting vendor invoices to clients. I arranged for delivery during Rebecca's lunch break, when her colleagues would see the stunning arrangement arrive and assume she'd received a romantic gesture from someone important. The irony was perfect. She'd get maximum public attention right before experiencing maximum private humiliation. The call came 3 hours after delivery. Mrs. Sterling, this is Rebecca Martinez. I think there's been some misunderstanding about the flowers you sent. Oh no, Rebecca. No misunderstanding at all. I wanted to thank you personally for helping my husband explore his interests. I'm sure you understand that all professional services must eventually be compensated. I don't know what you want me to say. Victoria, maintaining elegant calm. You don't need to say anything, dear. The flowers are simply a token of appreciation. I do hope you'll display them prominently. They're quite expensive. But then again, so is your 4-month relationship with my husband. The beauty of that first gift was its subtlety. To anyone observing, Rebecca had received a gorgeous floral arrangement. Only she knew the true message, and only she understood that her affair had been discovered, documented, and was now being handled by someone with far more sophistication than she'd anticipated. Rebecca ended the relationship within 48 hours. Giuseppe later told me that Richard had come in personally, asking why his business associate was no longer accepting flower deliveries. The humiliation of being exposed while simultaneously being dismissed was exactly the education she'd needed about the consequences of adultery. But Rebecca was just the beginning. While I was planning her gift, I'd already identified Richard's next affair, and this one was going to require a much more creative approach. Jennifer Walsh was a yoga instructor at Richard's Health Club, 28 years old, with an Instagram full of inspirational quotes about following your bliss and embracing abundance. According to the spa charges on our credit card, Richard had been embracing her abundance quite regularly during his lunch breaks. Jennifer's gift would need to match her spiritual aesthetic while delivering a much more earthly message about consequences. And I had the perfect idea. Jennifer Walsh presented a delicious challenge. Her entire brand was built around wellness, mindfulness, and positive energy. Her Instagram featured daily affirmations about authentic living and honoring sacred relationships. The irony of her sleeping with a married man while preaching about authenticity was too perfect to waste. For Jennifer's gift, I collaborated with my most trusted vendor, Helena from Sacred Spaces, who specialized in creating meditation areas and spiritual retreat environments for my wellness-focused clients. Helena, I need something very special. A complete mindfulness kit. Crystals, meditation cushions, aromatherapy oils, singing bowls, everything a serious practitioner would need for deep spiritual reflection. Oh, Mrs. Sterling, how lovely. Is this for one of your retreat events? Something like that. I want it to encourage very deep, very honest self-reflection about personal choices and their consequences. The package I created was a spiritual seeker's dream. Rare crystals supposedly aligned with truth and clarity. Meditation cushions embroidered with mantras about honesty and integrity. Essential oils blended specifically for releasing guilt and shame. And a beautiful singing bowl that Helena promised would clear negative energy and reveal hidden truths. But the centerpiece was a handwritten letter on handmade paper, designed to look like spiritual guidance from a wise teacher. Dear Jennifer, may this collection of sacred tools guide you toward deeper truth and authentic living. As you meditate on honesty, integrity, and respect for sacred bonds, may you find clarity about the energy you're bringing into the world. Included are photos to aid your contemplation of how adultery affects the chakras of all involved. Namaste. A fellow seeker of truth. The photos to aid contemplation were security camera screenshots from the health club's parking garage, showing Jennifer and Richard in his car during what were supposed to be her lunch breaks. Each photo was printed on high-quality paper, with spiritual quotes about honesty and right action printed beneath. I arranged delivery to Jennifer's apartment on a Sunday morning, the time she typically posted her most philosophical Instagram content about living with intention and authenticity. The package was so beautifully assembled that she'd assume it was from an admirer or spiritual mentor. The aftermath was swift and public. Within hours of receiving the package, Jennifer had deleted every social media post, about authentic living and sacred relationships. Her Instagram went silent for 3 days before she posted a cryptic message about learning difficult lessons about integrity. More importantly, the health club manager mentioned to Richard that Jennifer had abruptly resigned from her position, citing a need to realign her spiritual practice with her personal choices. Another affair ended, another mistress educated about consequences. But as satisfying as Rebecca and Jennifer's gifts had been, they were still relatively gentle introductions to my creative capabilities. Richard's third affair was about to receive a much more elaborate demonstration of what happened when you underestimated a woman who specialized in creating unforgettable experiences. Cassandra Price was different from the others. She wasn't some naive young woman who'd been swept off her feet by a charming older man. She was a 40-year-old divorce attorney who knew exactly what she was doing when she started her affair with my husband. According to her firm's website, Cassandra specialized in aggressive asset protection for high-net-worth individuals going through difficult divorces. She was the lawyer wealthy women hired when they wanted to destroy their cheating husbands financially. The irony was breathtaking. Richard was having an affair with a woman whose career was built on destroying men exactly like him. Either he was incredibly stupid, or Cassandra was incredibly good at compartmentalizing her professional and personal ethics. Sound of complex planning beginning. Cassandra's gift would need to be more sophisticated than flowers or spiritual tools. She was a legal professional who understood evidence, documentation, and consequences. She'd recognize the implications of what I was showing her much more quickly than the others, which meant her gift needed to be not just revealing, but legally devastating. And fortunately, I had the perfect idea, one that would demonstrate exactly why sleeping with a married man while specializing in divorce law was the kind of ethical violation that could destroy a legal career. Because unlike Rebecca and Jennifer, Cassandra hadn't just betrayed me personally. She'd violated her professional ethics in a way that could be reported to the State Bar Association. And I was about to make sure she understood exactly what that violation was going to cost her. Cassandra Price's gift required a different approach entirely. She wasn't some naive romantic who could be shamed into ending the affair with flowers and spiritual guidance. She was a legal predator who knew exactly what she was risking when she chose to sleep with a married man while specializing in divorce law. I spent 2 weeks researching Cassandra's professional background with the same thoroughness I used when vetting vendors for major events. What I discovered was even more damning than I'd expected. Cassandra had represented 3 women in high-profile divorces over the past year, all involving allegations of adultery by their husbands. In each case, she'd argued passionately about the devastating impact of infidelity, the betrayal of marital trust, and the need for severe financial consequences for cheating spouses. The woman who'd made her career destroying adulterous husbands was now sleeping with someone else's husband. The professional who'd built her reputation on moral outrage about infidelity was committing the exact same betrayal she prosecuted in court. For Cassandra's gift, I created what looked like a legal brief, professionally bound, meticulously documented, formatted exactly like the court filings she dealt with daily. The cover page read, "Evidence of professional ethics violations in the matter of Cassandra Price Esquire." Inside was everything. Hotel receipts showing her affair with Richard during the same weeks she was representing clients betrayed by their husbands' infidelities. Photos of them together at restaurants where she'd told her divorce clients never to be seen publicly with new partners. Credit card records showing Richard had paid for jewelry and trips that she'd been enjoying while lecturing other women about the financial impact of their husbands' affairs. But the centerpiece was a detailed analysis of how her relationship with Richard violated multiple sections of the legal profession's code of conduct. Conflict of interest, moral turpitude, conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice. I'd laid out a case that would devastate her law license. The gift was delivered in an elegant leather portfolio with a note on legal letterhead I'd had printed for the occasion. Miss. Price, please find enclosed documentation regarding your recent professional conduct. As someone who has built her career on moral outrage about adultery, I'm sure you'll appreciate the irony of your current situation. Your clients deserve to know that their advocate for marital fidelity is simultaneously destroying someone else's marriage. I've prepared copies for the State Bar Association, your current clients, and your firm's managing partners. Consider this your opportunity to resign gracefully before this becomes public. V. Sterling, J.D. The J.D. was a lie. I didn't have a law degree. But Cassandra wouldn't risk calling my bluff when the evidence I'd compiled was so thorough that any real attorney could file a successful ethics complaint with it. Cassandra called within 2 hours, her voice shaking with panic. Mrs. Sterling, we need to meet. This is a very serious situation. Yes, it is. Adultery is always serious, but adultery committed by someone who makes a living prosecuting adultery is particularly problematic. Please, you don't understand. If this gets out, it won't just end my relationship with Richard. It will destroy my career, my practice, everything I've built. I understand perfectly. That's exactly the choice you made when you decided to sleep with my husband while representing women he'd betrayed. You understood the risks. You just thought you were too smart to get caught. Cassandra ended the affair that day and resigned from 2 of her current divorce cases, claiming conflicts of interest that had recently come to light. She couldn't risk having her own adultery exposed while representing women who'd been betrayed by cheating husbands. But Cassandra's gift served another purpose beyond ending her relationship with Richard. It sent a message to my husband that his affairs weren't just being discovered, they were being weaponized against the women he was involved with. Richard had watched 3 of his affairs end abruptly within 2 months, each woman suddenly refusing to see him and offering vague explanations about complications and changed circumstances. He was starting to panic, but he still didn't understand the scope of what I knew or the precision with which I was dismantling his double life. Which made it the perfect time for Richard's gift, the one that would reveal exactly who had been orchestrating the systematic destruction of his affairs, and what consequences awaited him for underestimating the wrong woman. Because while I'd been educating his mistresses about the cost of betrayal, I'd been planning something special for my husband, something that would demonstrate exactly what happened when you spent 20 years married to a woman who specialized in creating unforgettable experiences, then tried to humiliate her with systematic adultery. Richard's gift would be delivered at our anniversary dinner in front of everyone who mattered in our social circle. And it would be the most memorable event I'd ever planned. Our 20th wedding anniversary party was scheduled for a Saturday evening at the Greenwich Country Club. 200 guests, a 5-course dinner, and a celebration of what everyone believed was a perfect marriage. I'd spent months planning every detail with my usual meticulous attention, ensuring it would be an unforgettable evening for everyone involved. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was planning the party that would destroy my marriage using the same skills that had built my career. But then again, irony had become my specialty. Richard looked handsome in his custom tuxedo, playing the part of the devoted husband celebrating 2 decades of marital bliss. He worked the room with the confidence of a man who believed his affairs had been discreet, his betrayals undetected. "Richard, you're so lucky to have Victoria," Mrs. Pemberton told him during cocktails. "The way she creates these magical events, you must feel so proud to be married to such a talented woman." "I am incredibly proud. Victoria has always been amazing at the details. She thinks of everything, anticipates every possibility. I couldn't ask for a better partner." "Oh, darling, You have no idea how much attention I pay to details, or how well I anticipate possibilities. The evening proceeded flawlessly through cocktails and the first 3 courses. I'd chosen to wait until dessert for Richard's gift, the moment when everyone would be relaxed, content, and paying attention to the traditional anniversary toasts. I stood gracefully, champagne flute in hand, and smiled at our guests with the practiced poise of a woman who'd spent her career commanding attention at elegant events. Thank you all for celebrating this milestone with Richard and me. 20 years of marriage is quite an achievement, and I wanted to share some special memories from our journey together. What our guests didn't know was that I'd prepared a very different kind of presentation than they were expecting. I thought it would be lovely to show you some photographs from our recent years together, moments that really capture who Richard is as a husband and partner. The first image was beautiful, Richard and me at a charity gala, looking every inch the perfect society couple. The guests smiled and raised their glasses approvingly. This was taken last spring at the Children's Hospital benefit. Richard told me he needed to leave early for a client emergency. The second image was Richard leaving the same hotel where our charity event was held, but he wasn't alone. Rebecca Martinez was clearly visible beside him, and the timestamp showed they'd left together during his supposed emergency. Fortunately, I was able to document where that emergency actually took place. Image after image followed. Richard with Jennifer at the health club, Richard with Cassandra at expensive restaurants charged to our joint accounts, hotel receipts, credit card statements, and security camera footage that painted an undeniable picture of systematic infidelity. But the final slide was the masterpiece. A perfectly organized timeline showing all 3 affairs simultaneously, with financial documentation proving that Richard had spent over $50,000 of our joint assets on his various relationships. As you can see, Richard has been very busy building relationships throughout our marriage. I thought our friends should know exactly how he's been spending our anniversary years. Victoria, stop this. This is insane. What's insane, darling, is thinking you could systematically betray our marriage while I planned your anniversary party. What's insane is believing I wouldn't notice $50,000 in adultery expenses. What's insane is underestimating a woman who specializes in creating unforgettable experiences. The room erupted in whispers and shocked conversations as our social circle processed what they'd just witnessed. These were the same people who'd admired our marriage, who'd held us up as an example of lasting love and partnership. I've taken the liberty of having divorce papers prepared. They're at your place setting, Richard, along with documentation of every expense you'll need to reimburse. Consider it my anniversary gift to you. I've also prepared gifts for your former partners, professional consequences that match their personal choices. Rebecca has been reported to her company's HR department for inappropriate relationships with clients. Jennifer's yoga certification board has received documentation about her ethical violations. And Cassandra? Well, the State Bar Association was very interested in her case. Richard sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the scope of what had been orchestrated around him. Every affair discovered, every woman educated about consequences, every detail documented with the precision that had made my career. The beautiful thing about planning events for a living is that you learn to anticipate every possibility and prepare for every contingency, including the possibility that your husband of 20 years is a serial adulterer who thinks you're too stupid to notice. 6 months after our anniversary party, which had indeed become the most memorable event in Greenwich social history, I was sitting in my new office overlooking Manhattan, reviewing proposals for Sterling Events' expansion into corporate crisis management. Apparently, there was significant demand for someone who could handle sensitive corporate situations with the same discretion and thoroughness I'd demonstrated in handling my personal crisis. My ability to document misconduct and deliver consequences with elegant precision had impressed several executives who needed similar problems solved. Mrs. Sterling? This is Marcus Chen from Pinnacle Financial. We have a situation involving an executive who's been inappropriate with subordinates. We've heard about your unique approach to handling delicate matters. Could we discuss retaining your services? Of course, Mr. Chen. I specialize in creating memorable experiences that help people understand the consequences of their choices. When would you like to schedule a consultation? The divorce had been swift and decisive. When your husband's affairs are documented with photographs, receipts, and security footage, and when those affairs have been systematically exposed to his professional and social networks, there's very little room for negotiation. Richard had agreed to every term I'd requested rather than face the public trial that would have revealed even more details about his systematic deceptions. He'd lost the house, the majority of our assets, and most importantly, his reputation in the financial community where trust was everything. His 3 former mistresses had each faced their own consequences. Rebecca had been quietly terminated from her PR firm after HR determined her affair with a client violated company policy. Jennifer had lost her yoga certification and been forced to relocate after her spiritual community learned about her adultery. And Cassandra had resigned from her law firm before the ethics investigation could formally conclude. But the most satisfying consequence was watching Richard struggle to rebuild his professional life after word spread through our social and business networks about his character. The same society connections that had made my event planning business successful ensured that everyone who mattered knew exactly why our marriage had ended. Meanwhile, my reputation had been enhanced by the elegant way I'd handled the situation. Rather than becoming the bitter, hysterical wife that Richard had probably expected, I'd demonstrated the same professional competence in managing my personal crisis that had made me successful in business. I'd also started dating again, something that felt revolutionary after 20 years of marriage to a man who'd systematically betrayed my trust. The men I met now were impressed by my strength, my success, and my ability to handle complex challenges with grace and intelligence. I have to ask, David Harrison had said over dinner at Le Bernardin, the same restaurant where Richard had taken Cassandra. How did you handle discovering your husband's affairs so methodically? Most people would have just confronted him or hired a private investigator. I realized that my professional skills were perfectly suited to handling personal betrayal. Why hire someone else to do what I could do better myself? David was a federal prosecutor who appreciated strategic thinking and thorough preparation. He understood justice and consequences in ways that Richard never had. Most importantly, he'd never been married before and was building our relationship on transparency and respect rather than deception and entitlement. That evening, I stood in my new Manhattan apartment, smaller than the Greenwich mansion, but infinitely more peaceful, reviewing the thank you notes I'd received from other women who'd heard about my approach to handling infidelity. Dear Mrs. Sterling, I wanted to thank you for inspiring me to document my husband's affair before confronting him. Following your example, I was able to expose his deception to his business partners and secure a much better divorce settlement. Your gifts to his mistresses gave me the courage to create my own consequences. Each letter reminded me that Richard's betrayal had led to something unexpected, a new career helping other women handle their own betrayals with strategic precision rather than emotional chaos. The woman who'd planned perfect events for other people had learned to plan perfect justice for herself. The wife who'd been taken for granted had become the strategist who'd systematically dismantled her husband's double life. Richard had given me gifts for 20 years, flowers on anniversaries, jewelry on birthdays, promises of devotion that turned out to be lies. But the greatest gift he'd ever given me was underestimating my capabilities so completely that he'd provided me with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate them. Every affair I discovered became an opportunity to create something beautiful and devastating. Every gift I delivered taught someone an unforgettable lesson about consequences. And every woman who received my presents learned exactly what happened when you tried to destroy the marriage of someone who specialized in making dreams come true. The woman who left a gift at every affair she discovered had given herself the greatest gift of all: freedom from a man who'd never deserved her creativity, her loyalty, or her love. And trust me, I was very, very good at creating experiences that lasted a lifetime.